Hi, welcome back again to the Gay World of Narcissism within the imaginary gallery. This is a continuation of the last video, of which mentioned how if you're a young gay and you find somebody who's leaving their partner because they met you, to look out, because they'll probably do the same thing to you. Well, this ties into a personal real-life story, and it's full of details, including terror, horror, and counter-manipulation. So we'll give you the backstory. As we all know, I was involved in a relationship with one particular person for just over 11 whole years. Well, let's rewind back to the beginning of all this, and there was the love bombing and all that started the first year. And during our conversations, the other person had mentioned that the last two relationships he had all lasted for 3 years, and then they were over. Well, I related that to a topic I had heard in one of my classes, either psychology or communication classes in college, and remembered specifically what the teacher had said, which is basically that when we meet someone new and we like them and we date them or whatever, that our brains fill with these chemicals, endorphins. We are excited, can't wait to talk to the new person, and so on. But the teacher had mentioned that normally that's temporary. So when you meet somebody new and they strike your fancy and you really like them, well, you're going to feel this great way daily. However, what he said was that after about 3 years, that feeling kind of goes away. And he said that in many couples, straight or queer, doesn't matter, that if someone's been in a couple for a 3-year period, about the 3-year mark is when one or both of the parties realize they don't have that magic anymore. And so they just assume, well, I guess I'm not in love anymore. And oftentimes there'll be some new contestant coming around flirting and shaking its tail feather, and the whichever person is like, oh wow, that feels like it used to with this one. Well, the point is that feeling doesn't last. So even if you switch to the tail feather after 3 years, the same thing happens. So when I was involved with this person for the first year and the second year, and I heard that story about the 3-year rule, I just kind of like played it to be safe, and I said, oh yeah, after our second year together, I'd said, well, I guess I've got 1 year left, and because your relationship's only last 3 years. And his response was, oh no, I'm going to be with you forever. And I thought, okay. Well, then the 3rd year came, and I figured, okay, well, this must be the end, because that's the way history's been. And I'm wondering if maybe it didn't, because he was going to directly challenge the fact that I was saying, okay, I'm going to predict it. Oh, and you're going to do it? Oh, see, I was right. These people cannot be wrong. So the 3rd year came, and I said the same thing. I said, well, I guess we're through now. This is our 3rd year. Now we're whatever. And oh no, I'm going to be with you forever. Okay. Well, then I was always nervous about this, thinking, okay, this person will just disappear, but it didn't. And then it was 4 years, and then it became 5 years, then it became 6 years, and 7, and by that point I was like kind of becoming complacent, thinking, you know what, I guess this is true. It is going to last. However, I also picked up throughout this period, like we talked about in the last video, that he had had this same kind of history, where he ran away from home with boyfriend number 1 and lived with it for 3 years, and then he switched from boyfriend 1 to boyfriend number 2, and then was with it, and then I met him, and he switched from boyfriend number 2 to me, boyfriend number 3, And so I knew that, and I was like, you know what? So, you're going to leave me then for boyfriend number 4, aren't you? And of course, it was accurate, but these people will not be challenged. So he would say, oh no. Well, I had a feeling that I was right about this. But when the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, so on year kept happening, I figured, well, maybe that was just a 2-time thing and that it will last. So I didn't know. But anyway, after many years of living together in the nice houses, eventually, of course, as we suspect, things slowed down. There wasn't that waking up and thinking, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, none of that was there. It was like, oh, yeah, I've seen you in your worst and your best. And, oh, yeah. Well, it was just like it is probably with any long-term relationship. Because you're not going to feel the same way you did in the beginning when it was all fresh and new, which I compare to like a car. My first car I bought, brand new. I always bought used cars. And at one point, my other car broke, so I figured, you know what? I need a new car, and I figured I'm not going to deal with some mess of some used car. So I had relatives that worked at a particular Toyota place, and I had the Blue Book online, so I wasn't going to fall for their crap of, oh, Blue Book price is $6,000. Oh, it's $20,000. No. So I brought the Blue Book printout, and I told them, I know this person who works here, and I got a deal where I got it like it cost, pretty much. Well, when I got that car, I was so excited. I had a brand new car, my first ever, so I would think of excuses to just get in the car and go somewhere for any reason, even if it was just to drive down the street and see what's going on down the street. And it would be so exciting. Well, that's kind of like these relationships. Like at first, you wake up and can't wait just to see the partner, but after a few years, you never wake up thinking, I just want to get in the car and drive. Well, the same thing with the relationships. Well, this had gone on, and I knew it would happen. I tried to state it beforehand to hopefully prevent any, oh, I decided I'm not in love, I found someone new, just to say, you know what, we're not going to feel this way in 3 years. We're going to feel different. It doesn't mean we're not in love. It means that our brains have calmed down with those chemicals. So I thought I was like nipping it in the bud. Well, I'll tell you what started to happen. Because you start taking each other for granted after you've been there for so long. Well, we had friends like this person's coworkers who we'd hang out with, and one of his coworkers, which happened to be his ex that he left for me, we used to bring us out to this fancy dinner at this restaurant, and he'd bring out like a new guy with him. And sometimes the guy was like a straight guy, other times it wasn't, but this person didn't really like openly admit it's dating anyone, so I just figured, you know what, he's got some kind of straight guy who's curious, or he's got some kind of date who's curious, didn't matter, but the point was he'd bring him out. Well, I used to see this and think, well, are they dating? And we'll never know. Maybe they were, but then of course the guy would end up dating some girl that was the next door neighbor of him. But that's just a little sample. However, we'd have parties in our house because we had this view that like overlooked the whole city on this deck that you could see like for miles, especially on 4th of July. Well, all of a sudden, the same guy the ex who used to bring boys out to dinners, he showed up with this hot stud with this face that was just beautiful, and it was like a young boy's face on a hot man's body, and he brought him over to our party. Well, at this point, the fires had like slowed down with the partner, and so I would like be trying to like bring fire back, saying, hey, that guy was cute, why don't we invite him over and see if we can play with him and have some fun? And of course his reaction was, that is sick, which is totally retarded when we find out the rest. But I was just like saying, well, trying to bring some kind of fire back into something, but that's sick. Well, this person would show up here and there, and I would look forward to seeing it. Then eventually later, I noticed that the monster partner I had a parking pass at the hotel where this pretty little kid worked, and I thought, well, that's weird. Why do you have a parking pass for where he works at the hotel he works at? And I'd think, well, maybe he visits him for hotel rendezvous. But again, none of this was ever discussed, so I didn't really believe it. I thought, well, it could be, but I see no evidence. Well, it turns out that eventually the monster partner started like hanging out with this kid on a regular basis. Keep in mind, for the 5, 6, 7, 8 years, he'd never had like a special friend that he hung out with. Yet all of a sudden now, this beautiful boy that I would say, like, yeah, that boy's hot, bring him over, that's sick. Well, he was hanging out with this person, which I thought was strange and unfair, because I figured, well, because he'd never say anything like, oh yeah, he is hot. He would just be like, he's just a friend of mine. Well, this person also had a partner that it lived with. And I would just say stuff like, oh, bring that cute boy over, invite him over. You're sick, he would say. Like, nope, I'm realistic. But eventually what happened was it became apparent that this person I was living with all these years, true to form, just delayed by several years, was dating this person. I could tell because he started getting new hairstyles, started getting new clothes, started wearing new perfumes or colognes, started changing things from, hey, next month we're going to this show. It would be, oh, next month I'm going to this show. And those were all clues. And then he would be like hanging out with this kid. And I think, okay, in all the years I've known you, you've never had a little special kid friend that's as beautiful as this one. What's up? And of course, I'd be told with the gaslighting, oh, you're just imagining things. He's just a friend. He's got a boyfriend. Oh, whatever. But that's the line I was given. Well, eventually it seemed like he became daring, like more daring, because there'd be like, I had to work on Mondays, and he was a hairdresser and didn't work Mondays. So one particular Monday, he made sure to rub in my face, oh, and of course this kid had no car, had no job. But he's like, I'm going to bring over my friend today. And he'd be sure to leave, go to pick up the friend, make sure I got to see the friend in the house on a Monday, thinking, great, he's brought a boy over, the cute boy, the day I have to work. And this is a subtle form of torture, because he knew I thought the person was darling, and evidently he did too. And he was like rubbing it in my face abusively, which I figured, how could you do that to someone who's given you over a decade or near a decade at this point of their life, and you're just going to do this tormenting torture stuff? So of course I left. I went to work. I worked like a 10-hour day. So I was mad, thinking, why would he bring that kid over the day I'm gone? And then when I was driving home, I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to tell him, you know what, this is not acceptable. I don't bring cute boys over when you're gone. You shouldn't be bringing cute boys over when I'm gone. So I drove home, parked, and when I got in the house, to my surprise, remember, like 10 hours later, I walk in, and he's out on the deck. And I hear him say, come out on the deck, we're having drinks. We are having drinks? And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding? He's still here? Oh my God. And I was just furious at this point, thinking, why would you have this boy here the entire day and still here? So I overreacted and went downstairs and grabbed a suitcase and started throwing clothes in it, thinking, you know what, this is sick. This is ridiculous. And while I was doing this, the little boy came down the steps to practice his gaslighting skills and said, you know, I get the feeling that you think that me and Monster are doing something together. He's not my type. I have a partner. Which is like, nice try, fuckface. I didn't buy any of it. So this is where I got to the part that Sasha Sloan talks about a lot, which I didn't even know existed then. But again, I knew that I was being ambushed by both of these creatures and thought, you know what? I've got to do something. So I came up with my own counter manipulation deal where after I finished my fake tantrum with the suitcase, I went back up the steps and noticed that the monster happened to have left the deck and went into the kitchen. So I thought to myself, oh, there's the kid by himself. And I knew what was going on. I'm not retarded. I could tell that this is not normal for the last almost decade for this to happen. So I went out there casually, used a straight face, again, as Sasha recommends, which I didn't even know who she was then, but I did it anyway, and here's what I did. I walked out there on the deck, shut the door, knowing the monster's in the house, fixing some drink refill, and I looked right at the child, and I said, you know what? I think the monster has a crush on you. And I said it just like that, and he didn't really have anything to say, and it's like, okay, and I left. Well, 5 minutes later, the monster was like, well, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm taking kid home. And I thought, good riddance. Maybe that worked. Well, I was happy thinking, finally, he's gone. Ugh. What is wrong with this person I'm living with? Oh, so they were gone. Well, I guess he drove the kid home. And then as soon as he drops it off, the phone rang. And I was like, oh, the phone's ringing. So I picked it up. Hello? And here's what I heard. This is sick. He said, I can't believe you went out there and said that to him. Why would you tell him that you think I have a crush on him? That made him feel uncomfortable and he wanted to leave. Don't be embarrassing my guests like that. But, are you kidding? That is retarded. Because I knew what was going on. And of course, the story comes out later. Yes, he eventually said things like, yes, we have been having sex. We have. But only, and this is sick too, because I suspected it from day one, and he was like, well, originally we weren't, but because you said that we were, he wanted to, so I figured, well, we might as well. So basically it becomes my fault. And this is all retarded crap, but this is how these people operate. They're going to blame me because I suspected what was really happening. All of a sudden, I've caused what's really happening, and it was totally retarded. So I caused that to happen, and I think, you know what? This is totally sickening. And the last part here is twofold. First off, I did some investigation on this child and spoke to someone it used to date and learned this person was very loose with police officers and other kinds of people, and I was told this person probably has something, some disease. So when I confronted the monster I was eventually moving out of the house from, I said, what are you messing with that kid for? He's got diseases. He's a hoer. He said to me, oh no, before I ever touched him, I forced him to go to the free health clinic and have him tested. Well, a few weeks later after I moved out eventually, the person that he used to date got a text, and the guy gave me his phone and said, look at this. And it said, I just found out I am HIV positive. And I'm looking at that thinking, I knew it. So when I saw the monster again, it said, you told me you had him tested. What's this all about? And I heard, oh, I just told you that so you wouldn't be upset. Fake! Liar! And the other part of this, which it's twofold. After the fury of that Monday, well, this monster figured it would take it a step higher. And it was a Saturday when I had to work, and he evidently took the day off. Well, he told me Saturday he was going to have several people from his salon come over and help paint the house. And I figured, well, why wouldn't you wait till I'm here so we could all paint the house? That's like a big deal. Turns out he made that crap up because I went and talked to the coworkers who said they were all furious with him for what he was doing with his kid, and he made that up. But he had told me that they were all coming over on Saturday, so I went to work, and I was there thinking, what's really going on? So I left work early. I thought, you know what, I'm coming home. So I left the workplace early, got home, and nobody was there. But I noticed the walls were painted, so I figured something's fishy. So I picked up the phone and called it. And I said, "Where are you at?" And he said, "Oh, I'm taking the kid to get his hair cut." And I thought, wait a second, you're a hairdresser. You're taking him to another hairdresser? So I was like furious with this. So I grabbed my children, the two dogs, got in the car and drove to the salon he worked at. And I walked in there with him, and I found the coworker that used to date Monster that also dated Kid, which is a soap opera, which may come out some other time because there's just too many, there are too many parts to it. It's a soap opera. But I said, you know what? I think that Monster is dating Kid. And the coworker, who I guess had a crush on Kid, said, you know what? I think you're right. And he was like giving me information like, you know what? I think it's strange. You work these hours. Well, Kid's boyfriend also works very similar hours. And Monster's very rarely here. I think something's up. And so I said, well, where does this kid live? And he said, well, I don't know exactly, but I do know it's over here. Well, I was infuriated because I thought, where is this going to go next? So I got in the car with the doggies, and I drove up and down the street he mentioned, went to one apartment complex, saw nothing. So I figured, oh, there's another one, and guess what I saw? I saw the Monster's car parked in this other parking lot. So I walked up figuring, okay, the car's parked here, there's apartments here and apartments there, so I went to the first one that was closest to the car, and I looked. I was a detective, because you have to be detective if you deal with these people, because they won't give you any clues. You have to figure them out on your own. And I noticed ashtray. I see his cigarette butt brand. Oh, I see the one the other fool uses too. And I figured this is the place. So I walked right to the door, and I knocked. Knock, knock, knock. Door opens, and there's Monster, and here's what he does. Ah, what are you doing here? I thought, oh my goodness. So what are you doing here? And at this point, I became furious. I transformed and shape-shifted into a person or creature I hadn't been probably ever. And I used this horrifying voice and said, I won't repeat what I said, but basically I said, get out here. And I had the two children saying, the two dogs, it's like, if you care anything about this family, you will come home right now and we will discuss what the fuck is going on here. Oh, we can't, we're going out. Are you kidding? You're going out with this kid? Okay. And I realized at this point, this is pointless. So, eventually the truth all came out, and I was told things like, yes, we have been making love, but we never do in the bed out of respect for you. Which is sick because I recall specifically after that Monday laying in the bed and sniffing the sheets and thinking, I smell a different cologne here. Who's been in this bed? And clearly it must have been the kid. But again, just like the AIDS HIV test and now the bed thing, these people are full of crap.